Gil Livingston. And I just want to welcome you tonight. This is our Ward 3 City Council election, or City Council Progressive Caucus candidate forum. It's wonderful to have everyone here tonight, and it's wonderful to be here to hear from our great candidates. We have 5 people who are interested in seeking the progressive nomination for this City Council seat in Ward 3. First, I'm going to tell you about the process. Each candidate will give an opening statement of 2 minutes, and then we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. And then the moderator will ask questions, and they will have a 1.5 minutes to respond. Then we're going to have a series of rapid fire questions that they can agree or disagree with. And then lastly, there will be some time for them to answer your questions. So if you have some questions, you should put them in the Facebook chat, and we will go through the questions and find some common ones and ask them what you want to know. And then at the end, candidates are going to have 1 minute for closing statements. So that's what our program looks like tonight. Next, I'm going to tell you how you can vote in the caucus next week, because our caucus is coming up very soon. So there's an in-person caucus, and then you're also going to have the opportunity to vote online if you're not able to make the in-person caucus. The in-person caucus is next Thursday, June 17th. Yeah, Thursday, June 17th at 6 p.m. It's at the Sustainability Academy parking lot, so it'll be outdoors. And at that point, we'll hear from the candidates, and people will be able to cast a ballot in person. Now, if that's not something you're able to be at, you can register in advance and you can get a ballot electronically. You have to register to get that electronic ballot before the live caucus. So you have to register by 5 p.m. next Thursday. And we'll be putting that registration link into the chat several times. So feel free to check that out. Then you'll have a chance, if you're a virtual voter, to cast your ballot. You'll have until 7 p.m. on Saturday, so 2 days later, Saturday, June 19th. And then the results of the caucus will be posted on the Progressive Party website. I'd also like to remind people that the Progressive Party does not take corporate contributions or funded by normal people. And it would be great if you have a chance to pitch in. We definitely appreciate your help with all that we do. Our website is www.progressiveparty.org. And then last, I'd like to note that we're asking people tonight to use the Facebook comment thread just for questions at this time. So we're doing it a little bit differently. If you have comments, you can save them for the end of when people are done speaking. But right now, we're just asking that you use it to pose questions that you might want them to answer. And after this online event is over, you can pose comments, and you can also interact. The candidates might get on later and answer questions and things like that, if they're able to. That is all the information I have for us about this event. And with that, I'll kick it over to Rachel Siegel, who's moderating the forum. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Annie, and thank you to all the candidates, the potential candidates, and to everybody who's out there watching this live, and to folks who are watching it after the fact. I'm Rachel Siegel. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Ward 3 with my family. I'm a former city councilor and a happy member of the Progressive Party. I'm excited that we have this amazing party, and excited that there's so many people wanting to get involved right now. So we are starting with opening statements. I will be giving people 2 minutes for that. So I will set my alarm for 1 minute 45 seconds so that you get a 15-second warning. And we'll start with July. Go ahead, July.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is July, as Rachel said, July Sanders, and I have lived in Burlington and Ward 3 for 21 years. I use she, her pronouns. Um, I started, I got into the political scene right when I moved here because Ruth Dwyer was running for governor. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was a pretty scary time. And I moved here and immediately was like, this woman seems like a bad idea. So I didn't join the Progressive Party officially or let them kind of know who I was until maybe a decade later, but I got involved in campaigns and went to caucuses and fundraised. Since then, I have door knocked, I have canvassed, or that is canvassing, I have leaflets and lit drops, all sorts of stuff, phone calls to get involved. I'm really, the things that are important to me are environmental and social justice, just to put that blanket statement out there. And what that means for me is really making sure that those who need the most support are getting the most support and they're not being exploited instead. And I feel that, especially in the last several years, those who do need the most support are the ones that are being exploited to make Burlington grow in a certain way that doesn't work for everybody. And I'm really interested in keeping that direction going, or not keeping that direction going, but keeping this other direction of moving towards helping those who really need the help, and then also focusing on maybe in environmental sustainability because that is going to affect all of us, and not in the same way, but it will affect all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, July. Owen, you're up next.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Owen Mills. It's so nice to be able to, meet you all virtually in this way, in this fashion. I use him, he, him pronouns. I currently work as the executive director of the Community Sailing Center, and I have lived in Burlington for about 7 years. My reason of why I am running is I've had the pleasure of seeing what I believe to have been a fantastic city councilor in Brian Pine operate and serve our community for quite some time. It's bittersweet to see him move up into CEDO because, but he now gets to serve our entire community in addition to Ward 3. I think the one moment for me that demonstrates that concept of servant leadership is recently I had gotten a phone call from Ice Cream Bob, who owns the Creamy stand on the waterfront, whose business was going to get railroaded by Amtrak. And he had reached out to me to ask of ideas of who might be able to help. I connected with him with Brian, and Brian in a very short period of time was able to connect with the people he needed to in the city. He was able to work across different departments, and he saved his business. And to me, that is the epitome of servant leadership. It would be how I would want to continue operating and supporting the city of Burlington, and continue to carry that forward for the people of Ward 3.
Thank you, Owen. Our next candidate is Joe McGee.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe McGee. I use he and they pronouns. I currently live on North Champlain Street, and I've been a resident of Burlington for 8 years. Before I tell you a little bit about myself, I just want to take a moment to thank Brian Pine for his decades of service to Burlington and share my excitement for his appointment to CEDO. CEDO is going to play such an important role as the city recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic, and Brian's leadership is going to be essential in that effort. So for a little bit about myself, I grew up in the Mad River Valley, and like a lot of folks, came to Burlington to attend UVM. My time in Burlington and my commitment to progressive movement building has formed my core beliefs. The idea that the issues that we're faced with are interconnected, really, and shouldn't be seen singularly. The idea that racial justice can't be achieved without economic justice or environmental justice or social justice. And those beliefs have driven my work on both of Senator Sanders' presidential campaigns. They're the reason I'm proud to call myself a big P progressive. And they're the reason I've supported Max Tracy's campaign for mayor, Representative Mulvaney Stanik's campaign for State House, and so many other great progressive campaigns. And those are the values that I use to guide my work as vice chair of the Board of Tax Appeals. I'm really running for city council because I want to be a voice for working families in City Hall. And, I'm a renter like a lot of folks, and it's been a challenge for me to be able to find housing and employment that make it possible for me to stay in Burlington. And I, for too long, the city has responded to the concerns of the wealthy and the well-connected, while working families face burdens that grow heavier year after year. And I think it's time that we reverse that trend and support workers and uplift marginalized communities and deliver true racial justice, environmental justice, economic justice, and social justice. So glad to be here tonight, and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Joe. Next, we'll hear from Julie Masuga.
Sure. Apologize for having to call in. I am currently at an Indigenous-led encampment trying to stop a giant tar sands pipeline out in Anishinaabe territory, but I will be back in Burlington very soon. I'm a queer 20 living on Pitkin Street, and I've been deeply involved in Burlington politics for a number of years. I've worked on the steering committee for Save Our Skies, has worked to try to get the F-35s out of our town. I've done extensive work with 350 Vermont as their co-director and fossil fuel resistance organizer to shut down fracked gas pipelines, as well as sort of get rid of the greenwashing that comes along with natural gas, and try to stop the spread of that throughout the state. I've been a big advocate for community voices for immigrant rights, working on policies like No Mas Pali Migra. And I've been most recently really involved in the Battery Park movement, which is working to both defund the police as well as to remove abusive officers from the police force. I spent the past several years disrupting pipelines, coal plants, ICE operations, nuclear bombers, and advocating for mutual aid, Indigenous sovereignty, houseless solidarity, Black liberation, and police abolition. So I guess that's just a few examples of the things that I do in Burlington, but I really enjoy getting to meet the people and doing mutual aid. And, we did mutual aid out of the mayor's parking spot because he wasn't really serving the people of Burlington. And I think that if I was on the council, I could better represent some of the more marginalized voices that are not being heard, and, give voice to folks, to real people rather than, development plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Ryan, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Ryan Adario, and I live on Main Street. I've lived in Burlington for 8 years. I feel like, just excuse me, I need to kind of have a hand on my dog a little bit so he stays calm. But I moved here from New York 8 years ago because I fell in love with a native Vermonter. Happy Pride to everyone who celebrates, by the way. My work in the city of Burlington has focused mainly on issues of affordable housing and advocacy for domestic violence survivors. I've also done a lot of fundraising for other organizations in the community. And all the while I have been teaching dance and theater at the Flynn and Vermont Stage, and also a lot of local schools and institutions. So through that work, I've been able to reach a lot of different parts of our community that live very differently than I do. I have loved living here so much. My partner and I purchased a home here 4 years ago, thankfully with the support of family. And it's a struggle. It's still a struggle. And I have seen how hard people work in this city and how they're just not able to do it. Meanwhile, I love going to restaurants. I love drinking craft beer. I love seeing music live in this town and having a great time with my friends. That lifestyle is absolutely unattainable for so many of our neighbors. And nothing is more symbolic to me personally than this thriving commercial pedestrian thoroughfare of Church Street. Meanwhile, we have a condemned high school. And that is a statement of what our values have been. And hopefully we can change that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you all. So our first question is not going to be one of our true long form questions. It's more of a straightforward question that we're hoping people can just answer in about 30 seconds. And it's sort of a political question, and it's about caucusing. And we use the word caucus in two different ways. One, there are the caucuses like we'll be having next week to vote for who will get the nomination. But there's also caucuses that we have, that the city councilors have, usually right before each meeting. So about every other week, they meet as a caucus, as a progressive caucus, to strategize and work on policy making. And historically, city councilors only attend one caucus. So people would choose typically if they're going to which party's caucus. And so my question for each of you, and we'll start with Owen, is three parts. What party do you plan to caucus with if you win this nomination and then are elected? Part two is, would you continue to run for city council even if you do not get the progressive nomination? And part three is, if you don't run, if you don't get the nomination and you don't run, will you support whoever does get it? So which party do you plan to caucus with? Would you run even if you don't get the progressive nomination? And if you don't run, would you support whoever does get that? And I'm hoping that each of you can answer that in about 30 seconds, and not to elaborate on the questions, just to sort of answer them straightforwardly. And then later, if you want to elaborate, you can do that in Facebook, or we can get word out to people another time. So Owen.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I am seeking both the Democratic nomination as well as the progressive nomination for this seat. In the event that I was to be nominated by the Progressive Party and not the Democratic Party, I would plan to caucus with the Progressive Party. In the event that I was to win the Progressive or the Democratic Party nomination and not the Progressive, I would likely caucus with the Democratic Party. In the event that I was to get both, I would most likely not caucus with either. In the event that I don't win both, I will not run as an independent outside of, or I will not continue to run if I do not win a nomination. And was there another part to that, last part to that question?
Yes, if you're not running, would you pledge your support in advance to whoever the progressive candidate is?
That would have to depend on which progressive candidate it was.
Thank you very much. Joe.
So absolutely yes to both questions. I will, if I don't win the Progressive Caucus, I won't be continuing on, and will absolutely support whoever does win the caucus. And if I do win the caucus and am lucky enough to get elected, I will absolutely caucus with the Progressive Party.
And I think I hadn't asked it, but I'm so glad that Owen said that he is looking for also the Democratic nomination. I think people should also mention if this is the only endorsement they're looking for. So I'll add that. Sorry.
Sure. Yes. The progressive nomination is the only one. The endorsement is the only one that I'm looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Julie.
Hi, I am only seeking the progressive nomination. I just frankly don't want the Democratic nomination. I've been very disappointed in their leadership, and would be really excited to represent progressive values. If I weren't to receive the nomination, I don't think that I would continue, and I think that I would be pretty eager to support whatever candidate that folks are excited about. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan, you're next.
Hi, I would absolutely caucus with the progressives. I have been a registered Democrat my whole voting life. I think in a very broad sense, I'm a Democrat. As far as city politics, though, I tend to definitely be more progressive. I think the process of going through these caucuses at this stage of the game, though, is helpful. So I'm unsure if I'm going to seek the Democratic endorsement as well, but my plan is definitely to caucus with the Progressive Party. My whole theory of running for office is that you should only run if you think you're the best person for the job. So at this point, I would assume that that person is somewhere on this screen right now. And so it would be probable that I would vote for whoever the progressive nominee is.
Thank you. July.
Hello. Yeah, I'm a progressive through and through. I would caucus with the progressives, and I would only run if I get the nomination, and I would support whoever gets the nomination if it's not me. The progressive nomination, let's be clear.
Thank you all. So our next question is about race. We are hoping that you can share your understanding of racial equity, what role you see yourself playing in the movement for racial justice, and especially the movement for Black lives, and how your role and your understanding will inform your policy making as a city councilor. So please share your understanding of racial equity, what role you see yourself playing in the movement for racial justice, and especially for Black lives, and how will that inform your policy making as a city councilor. And we now will have 90 seconds for each question. So I will be setting my timer for 1 minute, 15 seconds to give you a 15-second warning. And we're starting with Joe.
Sure. So I view racial justice as something that needs to be discussed in every corner of our government. In terms of policy making, every issue that the council faces needs to address racial justice. We can't continue to have a piecemeal approach to so many of the issues that we face, but particularly when it comes to dismantling systemic racism, that has to be a paramount importance and top priority for the city government and the council. And as far as my role in the movement, I've participated in the protests at Battery Park. I haven't taken a leadership position with the movement because I don't feel like it's my position to do that. I feel like I can best serve the movement by amplifying Black voices and doing my best to learn how I've benefited from a white supremacist culture and do my best to counter that at every turn for me. So that is how I'll approach it on the council. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Julie, you're next. It looks like Julie might have dropped off the call. Like she said at the beginning, she's in Minnesota right now fighting a pipeline and her service is spotty. So let's go to Ryan.
Hi. Hopefully Julie can jump back on at some point. The way that I understand racial equity and racial justice is what is the lived experience of people of color in our community. And I go back to some of my work with domestic violence survivors. We always kind of say, you know, you are your own expert in your own experience. And when people of color in this community tell us that they don't feel safe or supported by law enforcement, we owe it to them to believe them and act accordingly. I also took part in a lot of marches that took place over last summer. But like Joe, I think correctly stated, didn't take a leadership role. That really was not my position. But again, listening to people who are saying what their experience is in this city, those are the people we need to listen to. And that's who should guide discussions going forward about what would make them feel safe, what would make them feel supported as equal members of this community. And that is what would guide my work on issues like that on City Council.
Thank you. July.
I've started freezing a lot, so I hope I don't freeze up. I unfortunately missed a lot of what the last couple of people said, but I mimic a lot of what they're saying. So my my understanding, I grew up with not a lot, with a lot of culture around me and a lot of different ethnicity that didn't match my own. And just like Ryan said, I found that it was very, very important to listen to my friends, to believe my friends, and to understand if I didn't see something that they were saying was happening, to then analyze it. I still, to this day, I'm always seeking to increase my understanding and know, but we have to take it every step of the way, analyze every law, every area, and see where it affects everybody, especially those that are being marginalized, and racial justice and stuff. So that's really important for me. I also was in part of the many of the marches yeah, marches that went on last summer. I've been working on racial justice before that, though, and also just really seeking to grow my own understanding all the time. And where I would take it going forward is continue to go the path. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. I will cut it off. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Oh, it looked like, I mean, July, it looked like Julie was back for a minute and now, oh no, you're there, Julie. It's your own phone. I was looking for the 603
Yes.
number again. Do you
Sorry
want to
about
go
that.
ahead? Do you want to,
I found
that's
better
okay.
service.
Yay. Do you want to jump
Apologies for
in?
that.
Were you still
Yeah,
here
I did
when I
not
asked
hear
the question?
I did not hear the question.
Okay, I will repeat the question and then Owen, why don't you answer and then we'll have Julie go last, just since she's just joining us back in. So the question was to please share your understanding of racial equity and what role you see yourself playing in the movement for racial justice and especially for Black lives. And how will that inform your policy making as a city councilor?
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you very
go ahead.
much. So, yeah. My understanding of racial equity is, and I'll kind of put it in simple terms, is like starting out as a white person, starting out a game of Monopoly with $3,000 when everyone else is starting out, a BIPOC individual would be starting out with $5. And the entire system is, favors the individual who has been privileged to start the game with more. And the work that we need to do is to balance that equation again so that people are able to go through life with the same level of opportunity, and then also to make sure that the game is no longer rigged to support only white people. And the position that I've been lucky to play over the course of my life is to serve on boards of directors, of which there have been 10 different boards and government commissions that I've been able to participate in, as well as to be the executive director of a nonprofit. The process that I would take going forward is to make sure that we never start the design of any program or any process to rebalance that equation without there being somebody who identifies as BIPOC at the table during the design process.
Thank you. Julie.
Hi, I have personally been pretty deeply involved in movements like the Battery Park movement here in Burlington, involved in the encampment, marshaling some of the marches to try to get abusive officers fired, to try to defund the police, and ideally to eventually abolish them. And that is, obviously a piece of the racial inequity that's happening in Burlington, where there's increased police brutality and all kinds of horrible things happening, especially with Black folks. And in addition, I'm obviously out here defending Indigenous territory and sovereignty from pipelines. I've done similar things in Vermont. I think it's really important to recognize that we're on stolen land and among stolen people. And so a lot of the work that I do reflects that. The F-35s, for example, are harming more communities of color disproportionately. It's, going over 75% of Winooski, and that they have the highest refugee population. So there's just environmental injustices happening everywhere. And usually it's either across race or class lines, or sometimes both. So I think in my policy, that would be, something that I'd definitely be paying attention to, and going to groups like the Battery Park movement or Black Lives Matter, Greater Burlington, or Migrant Justice, and seeing, what is it that you need? What is it that will make your community feel safer? What is it that will help your community thrive? Whether it's, No Mas Falem Migra or any of the demands that were made over the summer. And I hope to continue to do that work, and would be excited to do that at the council level. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So our next question, Julie, you're actually on up next. So you'll get to do 2 in a row. And this question is about our neighborhood and constituency, and also about poverty, because considering the impact of poverty on Ward 3, as well as the other demographic issues, how would you approach representing us? And why are you the right person to represent this neighborhood and the needs of our neighbors? So please consider this question in terms of both being responsive to constituents and informing policy. So I'll repeat it again, and then we'll start with Julie. Considering the impact of poverty in Ward 3, as well as other demographic issues, how would you approach representing us? Why are you the right person to represent this neighborhood and the needs of our neighbors? Please consider this question in terms of both being responsive to constituents and informing policy. And again, I'll set the timer for 1 minute and 15 seconds, and then you'll have another 15 seconds after the bell chimes. Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. I've been living in Ward 3. I've been living in the Old North End for a number of years, and it's really shaped who I am as a person. I feel like there are a lot of people like me in Ward 3, where we're making enough to get by on rent, but only because we don't have student loans and things like that. And I see a lot of issues in our neighborhoods in terms of accessibility, both for queer folks and for disabled folks. Like, there are still a lot of places that that still have gendered bathrooms, which is very uninviting for trans folks and non-binary folks, as well as just looking at things like the sidewalks in the street that are so inaccessible that I've seen folks with wheelchairs decide to go on the road instead. And that kind of thing is unacceptable. So, like, in the previous question, I mentioned, all of these sort of really broad, overarching things, but I'm really also interested in the minutia and talking to my constituents. In my press release, I even said, please, anyone reach out with questions. It doesn't have to just be press. Like, I'm interested in knowing what the people that I would potentially be representing are interested in, and working with them and making sure that voices of marginalized communities are the voices that are informing policy. For example, if there's a houseless community issue, then having those voices heard rather than, pulling some kind of forum in a park where none of them are invited, because that has happened in the past. And it was, it wasn't great. But yeah, I'm just really interested in listening to people and collaborating. And I love this neighborhood, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
Thanks. This neighborhood, Ward 3, is a few different neighborhoods. I live on Main Street, right across from City Hall Park, which is very different than other parts of the ward. But as far as poverty is concerned in this ward, we live in a really economically diverse part of town. And my background professionally is out in the field working with people who are struggling. I have done surveying at encampments of folks who are experiencing homelessness. I have gone to all kinds of locations to intervene and advocate for folks fleeing abusive housing situations. And through that work, I think it's a lot less daunting to me to think about how I would reach folks who are living on the fringes, and also how that would impact my thinking as a potential city councilor would be to empower those organizations that are doing a lot of that work in the field to bring folks into the process of making policy for the city. I think there's a lot of work already being done, and we need to empower and support those groups that are doing that work already.
Thank you. July.
Yes, I love that this is the progressive debate because a lot of us are sharing kind of similar ideas. I too have seen those where we have these question and answer and, open forums that don't involve the people that are being affected the most by what is being proposed. Even before running for anything, I am having, again, lived in Ward 3 for 21 years. I talk to my neighbors, I talk to the people on the streets to really understand. I've called about the sidewalks, when I see somebody struggling with a wheelchair or somebody struggling with a stroller or something like that, and really demanding that things get fixed around here. So it's the same, that's the same approach that I would take in government, is listening to the people, talking to the people, really bringing them to the table, and really understanding. Also, there are a lot of people in this community that might that need to have a voice because they can't vote. So they won't necessarily be able to vote for me, but they still need a voice. So those people also still need to be talked to. And I think that that's really important to pay attention to that. And again, I go by a apartment almost every day when I walk my dog, and I have a really good rapport with them and really understanding what their needs are too. So it's really important. Thank you.
Thanks, July. Owen.
Thank you. So I echo what many of my colleagues have kind of articulated in this regard, and I too would spend a ton of time online through all of the Front Porch forums and social media to do the best I can to engage all the populations of Ward 3 to truly understand and drill down to and listen and understand the issues that they have in things like putting food on the table and the things that keep you up at night, and really get a good understanding of what those are and move into the process of bringing those voices to City Council. I think that's one of the things that is the most important aspects of servant leadership, is to listen and to elevate those voices beyond my own. And then the important part too is that to make sure that those individuals and the people of Ward 3 are incorporated into the process of identifying what the solution is, and not necessarily just pulling a solution from another community from across the country, but to actually work to design and create the solution based on what I hear from the people in my neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. Joe.
So I view economic justice as kind of the thing that drives me the most. And I see the needs for that in Ward 3 especially. We need more affordable housing, and not just affordable housing, but safe housing. And we have a lot of young families in Ward 3, and part of economic mobility is ensuring that people have safe means of transportation, that they're able to find parking that's close to where they live, that they're able to be close to childcare. So these are a lot of the issues that I've focused on in my past experiences, and will drive my work as a counselor. And that means not just reporting what's going on in the council, but showing up where people are gathering and hearing what they have to say and what their needs are. And that's outside of traditional spaces, where people normally express their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with city government. And so that is what my campaign is going to be about. It's going to be about building the kind of base that is important and necessary to actually do the work of a counselor and represent the neighborhood.
Thank you, Joe. Our next question is about policing. As you all know, we will be appointing a police chief soon. The question is, what do you think should be prioritized in this decision in order to create better public safety? So I'll read it again, and then Ryan will go first. As you know, we will be appointing a new police chief soon. What do you think should be prioritized in this decision in order to create better public safety? And again, it's 90-second question. So I'm setting the timer for 1 minute, 15 seconds to give you a 15-second warning. And you're on.
Sorry, had to find the unmute button. Thanks. So a few things. I think the key to the hiring process is transparency. We need radical transparency, especially given what has gone on with the police department in this city over the last couple of years. I think knowing exactly what that process looks like, what the qualifications are of the candidates, is important, but it's also equally important to have buy-in and input from the people who are most vulnerable and most affected by some of the issues that we've seen stem from our police department in recent years. So we need folks of color, we need queer people, we need absolute buy-in from all of these communities, because that is who has the most interaction with the police department, and so much of it is negative. And how do we know that? Because they keep telling us. So we need to listen to them and allow them to be a part of the process that hires the next person who will lead the department.
Thank you. July.
Thank you. So absolutely agree that we need transparency. The biggest part of that question, though, that speaks to me is it depends on what your definition of public safety is, because there seems to be a big difference of across the political lines of what that means. Political safety to me means that people are not afraid to walk down the street, and people are not afraid to call the cops if they genuinely need help for something. And people are not afraid of those who are paid by their tax dollars to protect them. So that is a really, really important thing, is that when those that are paid to protect us do not protect us, and in particular, certain groups for sure, but there's a lot of people for many different reasons might have history with police that is violent, and you know, and their privilege got them out of it. I know I have some experiences like that where my privilege got me out of it. And so it's really important to know that public safety is making sure that people feel safe, people to call the cops if they need the cops, but really that there's also other processes. So I'm looking for somebody, a chief of police, that understands that and really wants to work with the community to actually make sure the community is safe, so that we actually avoid creating new crimes. So we support the people in the community as opposed to just looking for crimes where they may or may not exist and then adding violence. Thank you.
Thanks, July. Owen, you're next.
So Rachel, I just want to make sure I got the question right, that it is the aspects of the police chief as an individual that I would prioritize, correct?
It's open a little bit for interpretation. The way that the committee wrote it is, what do you think should be prioritized in this decision in the appointing of a new police chief?
In the appointing of a new police chief, okay. I would say as it relates to the process, is that it should be fully transparent with that allows all of the, including the weighting of the decision, so we all can understand those things that are important in taking a look at who's going to be taking that over. I would say I do want to weigh in that I think the things that are really important as relates to this is to find the individual who is not necessarily coming with 40 years of experience as a police chief. What we need is somebody that has a strong background in transformational organizational change, because they, no matter who it is going to be walking into an institution with hundreds of years of embedded racism. So it's going to be really important that the outcome of this find someone that has a background and an understanding how to engage the community in conversation, and somebody who has a strong background in driving transformational organizational change in organizations with embedded cultures.
Thank you, Owen. Joe.
Sure. So I think it's important for us to have a police chief that's not going to be adversarial with the community, and really come to the table in good faith when it comes to efforts to work towards abolition and funding services that are outside of a traditional police structure. Somebody that recognizes that policing is inherently white supremacist, and that will support the efforts to have community control of the police, and that greater accountability structure that we desperately need. You know, I think a lot of these are long-term goals, and you can recognize that it's not going to happen overnight, but we need somebody who can work with the community to really make that happen. And so that's really what I would look for in our next police chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Julie.
Thanks, Rachel. This is something I've thought a lot about and would agree that abolition would be the end goal. But I think in terms of what we're doing right now, it's not necessarily a question of like who's qualified to be the best police officer, because we already know that that's a system that's not working. But if we really want to look into safety and preventing crime, we need to meet people's needs where they need to be met, like supporting mutual aid networks, supporting defunding the police and moving that money elsewhere. So I would really try to prioritize someone who understands that the best way to keep people safe and prevent crime is not to add more police officers, but to invest those funds into communities so that crimes don't have to happen in the first place, because a lot of them are just driven by poverty. So that's one piece of it. And in addition, I would be really excited to work with whoever becomes the police chief to take steps towards creating more transparency and more accountability. You know, we tried to get community control of the police, and that was denied to us. So the police are basically policing themselves, which is like telling a second grader he can grade his best friend's test. Of course he's going to lie. And so we really need to be listening to our community about the mechanisms that they want to see implemented, rather than just continuing to go with the same system of policing that is continuing to produce the folks like Brandon Del Pozo and other folks who repeatedly can't be trusted to even, manage their own Facebook accounts. So I think I would want to go in a different direction where, yes, I understand that policing would have to be phased out to some degree, but I think we need to do something different and better and safer and more communal. And I'd be really excited to support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. So now we have a series of rapid fire questions. And Lisa, it might make sense to have everybody on screen because I'm going to ask our 5 candidates to just keep their mics on, because after I ask the question, their answers will be very quick in succession. So I will be naming an issue and asking each of you to answer by stating strongly support, don't have enough information, don't support, or strongly don't support. And we invite you to share a more descriptive answer after the forum with our progressive membership. You can do it on the Facebook from this live stream, for example. But for now, we're really asking you to keep your answers just to those 5 suggestions. And we're going to start with July. And I think you all know the order that you go in now. You know who you're after. So we'll start with July, and we'll do a little test run and see if I don't have to say anything in between people. Just give the person before you a beat before you jump in. But if everyone can unmic themselves now, that will facilitate that. So July 1st, the first question is, do you support ranked choice voting for local elections?
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Great. And Owen first for the next question. Do you support just cause eviction?
Support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Support.
Strongly support.
Thank you. The next question, Joe will go first. Do you support strengthening the responsible contractor ordinance?
Strongly support.
Support.
Don't have enough information.
Don't have enough information.
Don't have enough information.
Thank you. The next question, Julie will go first. Do you support growing more affordable housing within the city?
Strongly support.
Strongest support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
The next question, Ryan will go first. Do you support a publicly run and unionized waste consolidation program in the city so that all landfill, recycling, and compost would get collected by the same vehicle, city run and unionized? Ryan.
Support.
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 Strongly support.
Support. Support. Sorry.
And I think that was a strongly support from Joe. Okay. So this says Joe first, but I think I got myself confused. Uh-oh.
I'm certain that I'm confused now.
July should be first for the next one. Do you support weatherization requirements for rental units within the city?
Is it me first or Julie? Sorry. Okay, sorry.
July.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
Strongly support.
I helped write it, so strongly support.
Strongly support.
Next question, Owen will go first. And you can, for this one, just say, oh, sorry, did I miss someone? No, we're good. Okay, so for this one, we can just say agree or disagree, because the way that we structured the comment was slightly different. I am 100% opposed to the F-35s and will do whatever I can to stop their basing in Burlington. So just agree or disagree. Actually, I take it back. We got confused when we were writing this one. I think that we can still say strongly agree, agree, don't have enough information, disagree, and strongly disagree. So still five options there. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I would say agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Agree.
Strongly agree.
And for this next one, we're just asking you to think of one policy that we haven't named that you are passionate about. And not for you to go into why you're passionate about it or what you think we could do about it, but just to take a moment. I'll pause for a few seconds so you can think of a policy that we haven't yet named that you feel passionate about. And if somebody before you says the one you were thinking, you can say the same thing. That's allowed. So we will start with Joe for this question. Please name one policy that we haven't yet named that you feel very strongly about and have passion for.
I think universal health care and Medicare for all are something that I'm very passionate about.
We've done some work on trying to ban new fracked gas hookups in Burlington, and that's something that's going to be crucial for the fight against climate change, or at least the worst effects of it.
Connecting underserved populations, particularly new Americans, with arts education and programming.
Also universal health care.
Seeing as how most of the Old North End is not wheelchair accessible, I think I would be interested in looking at ADA compliance.
Great. Thank you. I would love for all of that to happen. So now we have time for one or two questions from our participants. And the first one, I'm going to see if people can just take 1 minute for each answer, then we might be able to get through two questions. So we'll have 1 minute for this. This person stated, I'm deeply concerned about the impact white supremacy has had on our BIPOC neighbors and families. Recently, the mayor attempted to sideline a prominent leader of color from an oversight role on the basis of, quote, neutrality. I am interested in how each of the candidates will work with and support our BIPOC neighbors and families, and how they will hold the mayor to account should he fail to deliver on his promises made during the State of the City address to do more to support our communities of color. Should I read that one more time, the end part? Okay, I saw some yeses. I'm interested in how each of you will work with and support BIPOC neighbors and families, and how you will hold the mayor to account should he fail to deliver on his promises made during the State of the City address to do more to support our communities of color. And we'll start with Ryan.
I would give equal or even preferential access to communities of color to the levers of power in the city. I think what the mayor did was pull a fast one on all of us. That was pretty clear, and it was unforgivable. I think it was definitely something that has stuck with me, and I know it's stuck with a lot of my neighbors and friends in the community. And we need to continue to talk about it, because that is something that is one way that this administration's values have manifested, but it's indicative of a larger value set. And I think we need to keep talking about it in order to move the needle.
Thank you, July.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I completely agree about talking about it. I'm going to start with the second part. Is holding the mayor accountable is by actually pointing out when he makes those mistakes and really really holding him to that, because I think too often, especially in our society, especially with white males, people will say, oh, they made a mistake, but I don't know how to broach it, but really just not letting things down and just saying, you did this has to change, this has to change, and being relentless, and bringing voices to the table, constantly holding forums, like holding space for the BIPOC families and community members to make sure that their voices are heard and uplifted in any way possible, and especially things that are directly affecting them historically or just in general. Thank you.
Thanks. Owen.
Thank you. So I had the benefit of going through the process this year of creating a scholarship program at the Sailing Center specifically for individuals who identify as BIPOC in our community. I worked really closely with the Trusted Community Voices to create it, and as a result, we've seen a 400% increase in registration in our programs. And the experience that I've had in that is that our organization would have failed to have an effective outcome if we hadn't engaged those community voices in the process of creating it. We would have failed every single time. And the experience that I had in that, and what I would be bringing to this is, and I would say, and I've said it before, is that any meeting, any effort to create equity in our society without having an individual who identifies as BIPOC at the table, the meeting has to end. So often we move forward in creating the solutions without having people represented that are part of moving that solution forward. And that is something that I would bring and make sure that we just stop doing altogether. As it relates to accountability, the position of this is to, in my opinion, as it relates to servant leadership, is to bring the voices of people from Ward 3 to the public forum to show them exactly how much they are displeased with whatever the decisions are in the mayorship on those decisions that come up. Yep.
Thanks, Owen. Joe, your turn.
Yeah, so I have been fairly vocal in my dissatisfaction with the series of mistakes the mayor made in March, both with replacing Director Green initially, and then the report that came out that was wholly unsatisfactory and really a waste of taxpayer dollars. And so I will continue to be that voice on the council and work to bring members of the BIPOC community into the conversation and make sure that the decisions that are being made are the right ones, and fight to make sure that Director Green has the resources needed to actually make change. So that's my thinking there.
Thanks, Joe. Julie.
Thanks. I really appreciate that this question is phrased the way that it is, in asking how we would keep the mayor accountable. And I think that speaks a lot to the progressive values that we're trying to uphold here, that the mayor clearly isn't. I mean, he was doing a great job. We'd be like, oh, how can we better support him? And that's just not the case, because he has not supported us. Apologies, there's a van blasting music behind me. I will walk away from it. But I was really disappointed in the decision to terminate Thais Dean, and I think the mayor just tried to sort of get away with that. It helped that the catch on and just sort of pretend like it never happened. It was really disturbing, and I'm sure it was uncomfortable for Ms. Green and everyone else who was involved. And it was, the statement that was sent out by Moreau was fairly insensitive. I think in terms of actually holding him accountable, though, I'm interested in things like Proposition 0, which would give people more power, which would allow us to make binding ballot items and things like that, so that we would actually have the power to sort of not have to worry about the mayor as much until obviously we get someone more progressive elected. And I think I'm really interested in being a voice that's not afraid to speak out against the mayor when he does things like vote against our interests, which has happened over and over and over again. He's vetoed a number of things. He's vetoed things last minute, and I am not going to let that stand. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question from our audience at home. We're all at home. The question states, I am concerned about the housing issues we have here in Burlington. How will you be addressing the housing issues? What ways will you help rents be lowered in Burlington? And I'm adding on to that, do you believe in rent control? So we are going to start with July. I'll read the questions again. How will you be addressing the housing issues in Burlington? What ways will you help rents be lowered in Burlington? And do you believe in rent control? And July, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So yes, I do believe in rent control. And I think one of the biggest things when it comes to the housing crisis and addressing that is that when we focus on affordable housing, the way that we calculate affordable housing doesn't work. So we take the average of all of Burlington residents, and then for the income, and then we create the medium there. That's considered what is the lower income. So, but if you take what is affordable in the Old North End versus what is affordable in the Hill section, and then you just come up with the middle of that, it's not going to be affordable for the majority of the people, especially in the Old North End where we have the dense population that we have. So we really need to be able to calculate it differently, and we actually need to focus on the neighborhoods and what affordable housing really means for where these structures are being built or being changed. So that's the biggest thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Owen.
So while I support the idea of rent control, I think that we need to also keep in mind that Burlington operates within the larger structure of the state of Vermont. Those sorts of decisions do need to go to the state level, and it would be something that would extend beyond the 6-month amount of time remaining within this term of the remaining. So it is something I haven't thought into too depth about what that legal process would look like for moving rent control forward. But I would support it to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Owen. Joe.
Sure. So I appreciate this this question. It's an issue that's really important to me, and when it comes to getting things passed through charter change, we've seen just cause eviction pass, and we need that desperately, but it didn't make it across the finish line in the state legislature this year. So we're waiting until January now until they'll address that. And so that's going to be a big component of what I'll hope to do as a counselor, is ensuring that we're working with our state leaders to get those things through across the finish line, because we need those solutions now. And so when it comes to rent control, I will absolutely fight for that and make sure that we can pass a charter change here in Burlington. And once it makes it to the State House, it gets across the finish line, because those are solutions that we desperately need.
Thank you. Julie.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we view housing and the way that we have our Section 8 and the way that we, develop. We've got things like the New North End, which is turning into suburban sprawl, and everyone has their own home and their own yard and their own driveway and their own individual thing, rather than encouraging folks to live in multifamily homes, which I know is not everyone's jam, but both for the climate and for economically. It would be better for us. We've got things like the infamous mall pit, which was supposedly going to have affordable housing at the top of it when it was maybe going to get built, but that was starting at $1,000 per month, which no one I know can afford that, or no one that I generally talk to who's still a renter can afford that kind of thing. So I think a lot of this is about thinking about what we're doing with housing, and in addition, considering our houseless friends who can't, they're unable to get benefits, they're unable to get support in being houseless until they are chronically houseless. There has to be a number of months where they're houseless before they can even get help, because they're not considered houseless yet, just because they haven't been houseless for long enough. So I think it's a lot of reimagining to do, and I'd be excited to do it.
Thank you very much. And Ryan.
I'm so glad this question was asked. Housing is something that has been at the forefront of a lot of my work in the community. When I was at Champlain Housing Trust working in resident relations, or as the economic justice advocate at Steps to End Domestic Violence, housing is everything. Housing is security, it's healthcare, it is sometimes a connection that otherwise does not exist to other services that we can provide as a community. It's so closely related to so many other issues that I think it is of the utmost importance to any work that we do in the city, is making sure that we get people housed, but we need to invest in permanently affordable housing. That's really important. And also we need to have wraparound services. So a lot of the issues that people face with regard to holding on to their housing is because they don't have the support that they need from organizations in this community that are desperate to do that work. So the city needs to invest in those organizations to keep people housed once they have secured housing.
Thank you. That was great timing. I don't know if you heard the alarm on my phone, but for some reason it like made the tiniest little sound.
It was just good luck.
It was just good luck. Perfect. I was just going to try to reset it for 1 second and make it go again. So we are on to our closing statements, and we're going to start with Owen for those. And again, it's a 1-minute closing statement. So again, I'll set the timer for 45 seconds so that you know when to start wrapping up. Owen, whenever you are ready, you can begin.
Thank you. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak with you all. This is something that I've haven't been thinking about for a long time, but it really was, being able to carry on Brian's legacy of servant leadership and his service that he's provided for our community through to the remainder of his term. I am, will hold that concept of service directly to the people that I serve as the core value and the reason I am doing this. That means that you'll be hearing front porch forums from me that don't go on to a long diatribe, but inquire and ask questions of everyone. You'll be hearing a lot from me if I was selected to move forward and be your representative in City Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe.
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for tuning in on Wednesday night. And I want to thank you, Rachel, for moderating, and Annie for hosting as well. I'm running for City Council to be a voice for working families in City Hall. As somebody who's experienced the struggles of trying to find housing and employment to stay here in Burlington, it's been, for far too long, the city has really only listened to the wealthy and well-connected when it comes to their concerns. And I really hope that I can continue to build on the progressive movement that won us a majority on the city council. And I hope to have your support at the caucus next Thursday. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Julie.
Thank you for this amazing opportunity and for being patient with my tech problems. Those won't be an issue once I'm back in Burlington. I really want to run for this position, not to give platitudes about progressive ideology or vague ideas of maybe what the future should look like without any concrete action steps to take behind them. I want to bring in people and work with them to create the policies that are going to make their lives better. I'm not interested in being a career politician. I'm not interested in, trading political favors and trying to make the right connections with the right politicians. I'm interested in making connections with the people that I've already made connections with, the folks who are doing the grassroots organizing in our community, the folks who are, pushing for these more radical ballot items, and who are, the folks that are living in this city. And I'd be very honored to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I've so enjoyed this. I've only been a politician for about a week now, so I think this went well. It was fun. And I decided a long time ago when I started to have an interest in politics that I would only run for office if I felt like I had something to add or I had skills that would help me to serve my community. I feel like that, but I think service is the key. So I want to hear from voters in Ward 3. You can email me. I want to hear what's important to you. I want to share some of my ideas, ward3ryan@gmail.com or ryanisrunning.com if you want to check it out. I really want to connect, and I hope to earn your support and learn about what that support would be to you, would mean to you. So please reach out.
Great. And July.
Yes, thank you everyone for tuning in. And I care deeply about this city, and I especially care deeply about Ward 3, this neighborhood that I've lived in for 21 years. And I really care about the people who live here, and I want the city to function for the people in Ward 3 just as well as it functions for the people in other areas. That often doesn't seem to be the case. And I really want to focus in on a lot of the environmental and stuff that's happening. I went to UVM for environmental studies. It's really important to me. I worked for CSWD for a while, really focusing on the importance of bringing that in so that we are not getting out of control, and then really hammering in on the racial justice, looking at every area. So thank you very much.
Thanks to all the candidates. We have some information now from Annie.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's been a joy and really inspiring to hear from you all. It's great to be here on a Wednesday night and talking about progressive ideas and hearing from people who are so passionate and interesting. I'm going to give people information about how to vote in the caucus. And just to remind you, the caucus is next Thursday, June 17th at 6 p.m. This is the in-person version of the caucus, and it is at the Sustainability Academy in Ward 3, and it'll be outside. That's the in-person event. Again, that's at 6 p.m. Then you also have the opportunity, if you are unable to attend in person or you prefer not to, you can register in advance to vote virtually. So in that case, you need to register to vote virtually before the actual physical caucus. So you need to register by 5 p.m. on that Thursday, June 17th. And the link for that should be in the Facebook comments. We'll send it out. It'll be very available for you to register for that. And then you will be receiving a ballot right after the in-person caucus. And then you'll have until Saturday, June 19th at 7 p.m. to return that ballot. And that's using a secure online voting system that we've used in the past. And then the in-person and online votes will be tabulated and announced that evening on Saturday, June 19th. The other thing to mention is that the campaigns need help. So if you're interested and available, we are gonna need whoever emerges as the progressive nominee will need people to door knock and make phone calls and help support the campaign through monetary donations and other things. You know, you might be up late stuffing envelopes for a mailing sometime, and it's a fun way to spend your summer. And then again, the Progressive Party could really use your monetary donation. We're operating with a couple of staff members and they're making it work, and could definitely use any support that you're available to give. progressiveparty.org. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Just before you sign off, a couple of notes. There was a question about whether the caucus is open to only Ward 3 residents, and the answer is yes. And if you vote in the Progressive Caucus, it means you cannot vote in the Democratic Caucus, or vice versa. You have to vote in one or the other. And the other thing is a note from Town Meeting TV that this will be aired on community TV and will be available on their YouTube channel as well. And that they will also be hosting a town meeting TV forum with all the candidates who will be listed on the ballot. So whoever wins this will get an opportunity to speak in that forum as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. And the election, after the parties have decided their nominees, the election will be on August 17th. That'll be for Ward 3 residents. And my understanding is that there probably will be universal mail-in ballots, so you may be able to vote by mail. So either way you vote, I hope you participate in this election. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Feel free to reach out to the candidates and ask them questions, and continue fighting the progressive fight. Thanks so much, everyone. Good night.
Okay.